Right now, somewhere between the last tomato you'll pick off the vine this year and the first frost warning that shows up on your phone, there is a window closing, about 2 weeks wide, if you're lucky. And once it shuts, it does not reopen in October. It does not reopen next spring either. For a few of the crops I'm about to walk you through, September isn't the best time to plant them. It is the only time, and if you miss it, you are not looking at a smaller harvest. You are looking at no harvest, full stop, for an entire year. That sounds dramatic, I know. But stick with me, because most of what gets published about fall planting is written for warm climates, where fall crops just means a second round of the same lettuce you grew in April. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about 5 specific crops where the biology itself, not the weather, the actual internal chemistry of the plant only works if you get seed or cloves into the ground this month. I garden in Zone 6B, which means my average first hard frost lands right around the 3rd week of October. I've missed this window exactly twice in the years I've been doing this, and both times taught me something the seed catalogs never mention. The first time, I planted garlic in late October because I got busy, and what I pulled the following July wasn't garlic bulbs at all. It was a handful of golf ball-sized rounds with no cloves in them whatsoever. That mistake is why I now treat this month like a deadline instead of a suggestion, and it's why crop number 1 on this list is the one I want you to plant first this week. Before you do anything else on this video, if you're the kind of gardener who'd rather know why a plant does what it does than just follow a package label, that's the whole reason this channel exists, and it's a big part of why this list looks different from every other fall planting video you'll find. Hit subscribe so you catch the next one, because we go deep like this every single week. Most gardeners treat garlic like any other bulb and assume you can plant it whenever you'd plant a tulip or a daffodil. You can't, and here's the part almost nobody explains. Garlic needs a specific number of cold days to actually become garlic. The process is called vernalization, and a hardneck clove needs somewhere around 40 to 50 days of soil temperatures below 40 degrees Fahrenheit before it will divide into individual cloves the following summer. Skip that cold exposure, or don't give it enough time to bank those cold days before the ground freezes solid, and the plant does something strange. It grows, it looks completely normal all spring, and then in July, you dig up what's called a round. One single undivided bulb, no cloves, no seed garlic for next year, nothing to cook with beyond a single lonely bulb the size of a shallot. So the math works backward from your first hard frost date. You want cloves in the ground about 4 to 6 weeks before that date, which for most of the country lands somewhere in this exact month. I plant a hardneck porcelain type called Music Big Easy to Peel Cloves. Excellent cold hardiness though, German white is nearly as reliable if you can't find music locally. Break the bulb apart right before planting, not weeks ahead, because an exposed clove dries out fast. Push each clove 2 inches deep, pointy end up, 6 inches apart, and once the ground is cold but before it's frozen solid, bury the whole bed under 4 to 6 inches of straw mulch. That mulch isn't decorative. It's insulation that keeps soil temperature swings gentle enough that the roots keep developing all winter, even while the top growth sits dormant. Here's a contrarian one. Most people file spinach under spring crop and never touch it again until March. But Spinacia oleracea has a trait that actually makes September its best month, not its worst. Spinach seed goes into what's called thermodormancy, above roughly 75 degrees Fahrenheit, meaning the seed physically refuses to germinate in hot soil. That's why your July sown spinach bolted to seed within 2 weeks and gave you nothing but bitter leaves. It wasn't a mistake on your part. The plant was doing exactly what it evolved to do. Once soil temperatures start dropping through September, that dormancy switch flips, and spinach germinates fast and grows a genuinely deep root system before winter shuts things down. I use Bloomsdale Long Standing for flavor and Giant Winter specifically for cold survival. Both will sit through freezing weather looking half dead, and then the moment day length starts stretching again in late winter, they explode with growth weeks before anything you could direct sow in spring even germinates. Once your seedlings hit about 2 inches tall, bury the bed under a heavy straw mulch the same way you did the garlic. You're not trying to keep them warm. You're trying to keep the freeze-thaw cycle from heaving the roots out of the ground, which is what actually kills overwintered spinach far more often than cold does. This next one connects to something that has nothing to do with gardening at all, and it's the piece of this video I'm most excited to get to. Wood frogs Rana sylvatica survive winter by letting most of their body actually freeze solid, and they don't die because their liver floods their cells with glucose right before the freeze hits, which lowers the freezing point inside each cell and keeps ice crystals from shredding them apart. Kale, Brassica oleracea var, Ossifila, does a version of the same trick. When frost hits a kale leaf, the plant converts stored starches into soluble sugars, which lowers the freezing point of the fluid inside its cells the exact same way antifreeze lowers the freezing point of water in your car's radiator. That's not a metaphor. That's the literal chemistry behind why kale tastes noticeably sweeter after 2 or 3 hard frosts than it did in September when you planted it. Get seed or transplants for a cold hardy variety like red boar or winter boar into the ground now, and you're not racing the frost. You're setting up for it because the frost is what finishes the flavor. Sow now for a fall and winter harvest. Harvest the outer leaves and let the center keep producing. And don't panic the first time you see ice on the leaves in the morning. That's the plant doing exactly what it's supposed to do. If you're finding this useful so far, a quick like on this video genuinely helps. It's what tells YouTube to put this in front of other gardeners who are about to miss this same window. And if you haven't hit subscribe yet, now's a good time because we're only halfway through this list. Same freezing point chemistry applies to Daucus carota subsp, sativus, and this is where candy carrots comes from. Homesteaders have called overwintered carrots that for generations because a carrot that's been through several frosts converts starch to sugar exactly like the kale does. And the difference in sweetness compared to a summer-pulled carrot is not subtle. You will taste it immediately. But here's the mistake I made my second year growing these, and it's a timing mistake, not a technique mistake. Carrot seed germinates slowly 14 to 21 days is normal, sometimes longer in cooling soil, and the roots still need roughly 10 to 12 weeks to reach real size before growth slows down for winter. If you wait until the last week of September to direct sow, you've done the math wrong, and what you'll pull in December is a bed of skinny, undersized roots instead of the storage carrots you were expecting. Get seed of a variety bred specifically for overwintering, like Napoli or Merida, into the ground at the very start of this month, not the end of it. Once a hard freeze threatens to lock the ground solid, bury the bed under a thick blanket of straw. I go 12 inches deep here, because the goal is keeping the soil itself workable enough that you can still pull carrots by hand in January. You're not trying to stop the cold from reaching the roots. You're trying to stop the ground from freezing into concrete around them. Last one, and it's the crop that never makes these lists, because most people don't think of it as a crop at all. You're not going to eat it. Trifolium incarnatum, crimson clover, is what's called a cover crop, and sowing it this month is arguably the highest leverage thing on this entire list, because what you're actually growing isn't a plant, it's next year's soil. Clover, like all legumes, partners with a soil bacterium called Rhizobium leguminosarum that colonizes its roots and forms small nodules. Inside those nodules, the bacteria pull nitrogen straight out of the air, nitrogen your plants can't use in that gaseous form, and convert it into a form your soil can actually hold onto. Come spring, you cut the clover down before it sets seed, let it break down right on the bed as what's called a green manure. And every bit of nitrogen those roots banked over winter releases straight into the soil for whatever you plant next. Homesteaders who've run the numbers on this put the nitrogen contribution from a well-established clover cover crop in the range of 50 to 100 pounds per acre equivalent for a home garden bed. That can mean skipping a full round of purchased fertilizer next spring entirely. Broadcast the seed thick, about 8 to 10 seeds per square foot, rake it in lightly, and water it in. If your winters run colder than mine, winter rye sea kale cereal is the tougher alternative. It won't fix nitrogen the way clover does, but it'll scavenge nutrients from deep in the soil profile and choke out weeds all winter, which is its own kind of insurance. Either way, this is the one crop on the list where the harvest isn't for you. It's for the beds you'll be standing in next April. So that's the list: garlic, spinach, kale, carrots, and clover. And the thread running through all 5 of them is the same. Each one is doing something in September that it physically cannot do in any other month, whether that's banking cold days, waking up out of thermodormancy, or fixing nitrogen before the ground locks up. Miss this window and you're not behind schedule. You're out for the year. But here's what I didn't cover today, and it's the thing that actually determines whether any of these 5 survive the winter. You just planted them into the mulching technique itself, and specifically the one mistake that suffocates overwintered crops instead of protecting them, which is something almost every gardening channel gets wrong when they tell you to just add mulch. That's exactly what we're getting into next. Tell me down in the comments which of these 5 you've already got in the ground, and which one you're trying for the first time this year. I read every single one. And I'm genuinely curious how far south this list still holds up.